Right, Henry. So thanks for being willing to join us, mate. So for those who obviously don't know you and kind of you're 31, so all the pupils at school right now would have no idea who you are. And a lot of teachers are kind of new, but there'll be a whole group of us who have been here for a long time. But for those who are kind of like watching in, Henry left here in what, 2012 or so?
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
So Henry was in my first couple of years when I joined the school. Really talented rugby player who went on to play at Oxford, got 4 Oxford Blues, and kind of we're going to talk through his kind of journey. And I think, Henry, where I'm going to start with is when you first joined the school. It's probably fair to say in those first couple of years, you got into quite a trouble is probably the wrong term. You probably struggled with the boundaries of it all and more mischief than trouble, but kind of, is that a fair thing? Was it just a whole culture shock of coming into school life at Cranley?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was, as most people are 14, I was pretty hyper, super energetic, but yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a sports scholarship, predominantly for rugby, to Cranley. And then, yeah, that was a massive switch from the sort of state system where, I mean, you go to school, but then you go home, right? You go home at the end of the day versus just being in that boarding environment. There's a lot of excitement. You know, you've got some great mates there, but you do slightly egg each other on. And yeah, I think that the structure and all of it was a little bit of a shock at first. I mean, it was very much chalk and cheese to sort of what I was at school previously.
Yeah, and I think the interesting bit and why I kind of wanted to start with you and the kind of these series that I'm going to do with it. If I'm honest, when I first met you, I would have had no real understanding or that academically you were kind of on a pathway to going to Oxford. And I guess, again, if you had looked at yourself in the 4th form, you were kind of towards the bottom end of the sets. You were kind of not struggling is the wrong term, but I don't think you probably had any aspiration yourself or even considered the concept of going off to an Oxford. Do you remember, was there like a light bulb moment where suddenly it was like, actually, I'm quite good at this? Or was it just you started to work? Was it your peers that got you to work? What was it that suddenly made you kind of become a bit more academically focused?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mixture of two things. I definitely remember the fact that James Thompson, who maybe some of the teachers remember as well, he played open side for the A's when we played together and stuff. So good mate of mine, and he was very academic. And there was a little bit of him saying, look, you know, you should apply yourself here. You're sort of wasting potential. So that probably sort of made me probably apply myself a bit more through GCSEs, definitely. And then they went relatively well. And then it was, I think, a case of yourself and a few of the other teachers basically saying, look, you could have a good run at going to Oxford or Cambridge here. And I also think at the time, I didn't know a huge amount about what that was, what that meant, what the opportunity was. I mean, I'd always been a sportsman, so you hear of examples like Loughborough and things like that for sport, but probably didn't appreciate the opportunity for that. But then I think A-levels was the clicking point of understanding the opportunities that would give me, both sporting and non-sporting, and sort of thinking, well, you know, I've got this opportunity, I'm here, why not actually try and apply myself? And worst case scenario, you don't get in, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting, isn't it, that kind of what you were, if I'd asked you when you were 13 or 14 what you want to be, you'd have probably turned around to me and said a professional rugby player.
100%. I wouldn't want to play for England, for sure.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? And that kind of evolution of it. And I will fondly remember kind of you were part of that first group who were trying to do that high performing rugby side. So
yeah, awesome.
I remember us going in early morning, 6 a.m. into the gym. Or kind of, it wasn't even a gym at the time, it was just a cupboard. But also you, James, Harry, Henry, those others who, particularly you and James, would kind of run into it, come and do it for half an hour and bang, straight back to studying. And it was really inspiring, that idea that suddenly you went from applying yourself massively into your sport and kind of getting involved in the wider school life, but then jumping with the academic side to it. How was the actual, I know it's a while ago and you're not as old as me, but the actual process of applying for Oxford and stuff, for someone who didn't know much about it, and you, I guess even at 14, 15, you probably weren't even maybe considering university.
Yeah.
Like, was it completely eye-opening? Was it daunting? Kind of, what made you step out and go, actually, I'm gonna apply to it?
I definitely think it probably was a little bit daunting. From memory, there was definitely support from various teachers. I mean, I ended up applying for chemistry, so there's a couple of the chemistry teachers who I think luckily some of them had been and had that experience, but it definitely was a bit of an unknown. I mean, I think the whole university application process is a little bit unknown, but then particularly with Oxford, because you've got the collegiate system, so you've got all the different colleges, that's another layer of complexity. You're not just applying, I suppose similar with places like Durham, but you then got to choose colleges and have a bit of a sort of interview process. So I definitely was very grateful of the investment from the school and the staff to help that process, and that definitely put the nerves at ease a bit. And we'd do mock interviews, which again, you sort of think, how do I really need these? But when you actually come to do them, if you've done 6-7 mock interviews, that does, relieves the pressure a little bit, because you're like, okay, this is quite familiar.
Yeah. And kind of, so then kind of fast forward a little bit, you get your grades, kind of, I think you probably opened up the letter of it all and were like, wow. And again, looking at like the change that it had for you, and then you head off to Oxford. That in itself must have been a pretty big eye opener into a whole different world, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely. Just, I mean, from the sports side, one thing, but yeah, you sort of appreciate the history of the university. Like, you go into an institution which is like 1,000 years old, and there's a lot of very intelligent people all in one place, and you look at the sort of alumni and what they've gone on to achieve and stuff. And
did you have imposter syndrome? Did you kind of have that like idea of you're a boy who joined Cranley on a rugby scholarship as such, and
maybe to a little bit. Like, it was probably even before imposter syndrome was like a term that was used, a bit more recent. But I do think there was an element of that. Like, am I cut out for this? Like, especially because there weren't many of us going as well from school. I mean, probably somewhere around 10 to sort of Oxford and Cambridge combined. And it was like, well, why is this me? Am I going to get found out here? Like, am I going to be smart enough to do this? And definitely there's some very smart people there, but it is also just like any application process. Like, there's also an element of luck and lottery to it. And there's some really smart people that don't get in as well, for sure. So, yeah, I think so. And I mean, that probably would have, it definitely playing sport probably helped me get over that quite quickly, I think, in the sense of you're then suddenly into like a sport community, and you're like, okay, most of these people are pretty similar to me. Like, they're all here for the same reasons. They've got the same motivators. They're just like me. So that definitely helped, I think. And pre-season, I think, started like 6 to 8 weeks before uni as well. So that was a help in terms of actually getting up a bit earlier, getting familiar with the layout and things and stuff.
And as I understand it, my partner, she went to Cambridge, and we talk about it quite a lot in terms of it. They're quite short terms, aren't they? But they're really, really very, very intense. I guess a couple of questions for you on it is, how was it kind of trying to play rugby? And for those who don't understand, I guess, varsity rugby or varsity sports, and I appreciate it's been diluted slightly now, but go back to when you kind of did it. You had a match against Cambridge at Twickenham. These are big old games. There's a lot of focus on it, a lot of time commitment, a bit like school sport, like commitment to it. But
take it all up.
How was it kind of studying chemistry and sport, which on paper, a lot of people would turn around and go, then that's not a usual mix of being a high-end kind of rugby player, but then also doing chemistry. How was that, trying to balance those things out?
It was pretty tough in term time. I'd actually say it was pretty similar to when I was trying to almost like juggle a job after uni and still play a bit of like the National League stuff. You'd be chemistry in particular, because you've got lab commitments, so you might be in all day for a couple of days a week running experiments or anything like that, and then you're basically on your bike straight down to training. You've probably been to the gym in the morning, and including a game, you're probably having 6 to 7 sessions a week, compulsory, a mixture of training, recovery. So yeah, it was good. I mean, it forced you pretty quick to get quite good at your time management, I think, and it did mean that occasionally you'd be doing work in the evenings, and again, you just sort of fit stuff around when you can. But it was certainly a bit of a challenge, like a shock to the system, I would say, because just sheerly like the volume of work that you'd expected to do from A level to that is, you sort of expected to hit the ground running, and you're like, okay, this is a lot more like homework, as it were, than I'd be used to doing in prep and stuff like that.
And I've always been fascinated with the varsity game, and that kind of you work all year basically for one match, and kind of my sporting environment, my kind of what I experienced as a player was always every Saturday mattered, and you built it up, and end of season you're kind of top of the tree, or you're kind of relegated, or you're working towards something. Talk me through kind of the pressure of that, because you ended up being captain, didn't you, in one of the years?
Yeah, 2015.
Yeah, and to get kind of 4 Blues, I remember coming up to watch your first game actually, and to end up having 4 Blues is a remarkable achievement. But the pressure of that kind of game and pressure of selection, was it as intense as kind of I imagine it to be? How did you deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of pressure. It's like you just have one sort of Everest season, and you play all these games, and it doesn't really matter if you play like some amazing, interesting teams in the build up to it. Like you'll play, A-League teams and things like that, and it doesn't actually matter if you win or lose, subject to the performance. And sometimes you'll play almost professional outlets, and it's you take what you can from those learnings. Like it was a close game, but we didn't win. And then the moment the sort of selection happens, the pressure does really ramp up, and there is a fair amount of media coverage, not a huge amount, but like it's on like BBC and that sort of thing, or Sky Sports, wherever it's being played. And you have this, I think you need outlets, basically you need to just relax. I think probably in my first year, looking back, I let that like pressure get to me a little bit too much, in terms I just went to all consuming, this is all I'm going to focus on. But actually you need to try and do the stuff outside that, like decompress basically. But yeah, it's a really interesting concept. Like your season just depends on one game, and it's a cup final in the sense it's going to happen. You, like you say, don't have to win 10 games to get there. I mean, I think some of the years we'd have probably won less than half our games in our sort of build up to it, going down to like Northampton, Wasps, those sort of guys, and really tough fixtures, but losing most of them. And then
and in terms of then captaining it, as I understand it, as a tradition, you basically have to go around as captain and tell people you're either in or out. What was that like? One, I guess you're on the fortunate side as a player that you didn't get the old "you're not in," but as a captain, to go around to people who it may not have been their absolute driver to come to university, although for some it probably was. To walk around and go, you've given up kind of 8 hours a week. You've probably shifted your life plan to come to Oxford to play in this game, but actually you're not selected. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, conversations of you're in are super easy, right? They're lovely conversations. It's the handful of, I think there's probably a lot of people who know deep down, or they've realised, it's still not a nice conversation, but they're not going to get selected. There's people ahead of them. There's a handful then where it could go either way, and you could be starting on the bench, could be on the bench or not in the 23. And those ones are pretty difficult conversations, and I think acknowledging, it's like it's a nasty conversation, it's a horrible situation. Here's the rationale. Try and help someone understand it, and then people react differently. Some people are really disappointed. Some people react, try and change your mind, a bit more confrontational, but. At that point, those conversations are already done effectively.
Yeah, and did you have to? Were you? Because I guess sometimes with those hard conversations, it's sometimes kind of honesty is the only way, isn't it? And it's sometimes you just got to be quite not blunt, but you got to just say, well, that is it. And it's never very easy. But then the actual matches, how many of the 4 did you win?
4 out of 4. Although the last year when I was skipper, I was only on the pitch for like 120 seconds or something.
Yeah.
Got knocked out pretty early on. I don't know if you remember, Jamie Roberts was playing 12.
Yeah, I do remember.
I don't know if the audience will be old enough to remember who he was, but a serious mismatch there. Giving away about 15 kilos in a 12 channel and got knocked out. But it was amazing. I mean, I can't remember exactly the attendance. I think in my first year it was about 32,000. Just awesome.
Because you scored in that game, didn't you?
I scored in my second year.
Yeah,
all different, and I think probably I appreciate all really different groups as well, because people leave either they graduate or you have postgrads who are there for a short amount of time. So in the same way you only have the one game a season, each journey is very different, each group of players. And in the same way at school, when upper sixth leave and you go into upper sixth, you have a different 30 boys. It's similar to that, where you'll have some people who are constants throughout and you'll get on with, and then you'll make new friends as other people come in, and those bonds will definitely last you a lifetime for sure.
And did you struggle with anxiety with it all, or did you just kind of actually, when it came to matches, because you were never, when you were at school, you never seemed to be things.
I think maybe I was probably a little anxious in my first year. From memory, I'd torn a hamstring maybe 4 weeks before, so I hadn't played any rugby basically up to the game, and that was playing on my mind. But I tried to enjoy it basically. Definitely would get nerves. Normally they would go away, fairly quick, and the moment the whistle went, you're just playing another game of rugby at that point. But I think I got better at just sort of being like, it's just a game of rugby, like enjoy it. This is a super cool experience. Like there is some pressure, but that's quite nice. You're pretty privileged to be in that position as well.
Yeah. And then kind of going back a little bit more to school time. So yeah, 13, 14, playing for England at rugby was probably the be all and end all for you. And then obviously academics started to work alongside it, and you managed your time and it all worked. You were always kind of overlooked from kind of Harlequins or kind of like academy stuff. When was it that you started to kind of realize that life in terms of your rugby wasn't maybe going to be down the professional route, but was going to be a different way? Did you kind of have a moment to it all, or even at Oxford, were you still kind of chasing that potential to kind of go in at a different time to others in terms of the professional game?
Yeah, I think I probably realised it around 16, probably, in terms of at least that it wasn't going to be coming out of school and going into a contracted environment. That was back, I mean, I don't know if the system's still the same, but that's where clubs like Quins, they'd have sort of 4 or 5 boys on the books. And if you sort of missed that group, then maybe 2 or 3 of those would get given contracts. So I suppose I knew then that university was a better thing for me to be doing. And then, I'd see boys who would, admittedly, a lot of them would, guys I played various sort of like levels of rugby with as a kid, juniors and, counties, southeast sort of stuff. You see some of them go through and crack on. But looking back, I definitely realised that if you don't get picked up by an academy at 18, you've got a huge amount of opportunity coming after that. I mean, look at Elrington and Taylor from 2 of the 4 you mentioned earlier. Both of those guys went on to play pro rugby, having been to university. So yeah, it's different. I mean, a lot of it is, I think, people mature at different rates as well, body wise. Like some people are just completely different to 22 when they were 18.
I keep saying to the pupils that it's just not linear. There's just not one path. And you're right, like people like Henry Taylor or Harry Ellington, who had probably like a decade in professional sport. If you had asked Harry when he was 18, 19, and he had been kind of cut from Harlequins and suddenly he was up at Loughborough, and probably sitting there going, well, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. And then you kind of look at him, and he then had 5-6 years at London Irish, and then he's signing at Gloucester, and same with Henry Taylor. Kind of, it's just not linear, and there's not like one perfect kind of route to it all. So the other aspect to it was, right, so you're at Oxford, you're doing kind of the chemistry, you're playing kind of the 4 Blues, and then it's time to finish. You're now in sports marketing, sport management, that kind of side to it all.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think for all our upper sixth, lower sixth, about UCAS and that side to it, kind of, I'm guessing there's not a huge amount of chemistry that you studied that now is involved in your day-to-day.
No, not at all.
But I presume it's, particularly at somewhere like an Oxford or a Durham, or obviously I'm a Loughborough boy, I guess it's that learning of that time management. I guess it's that challenge of knowing how to learn and showing that you can dedicate to something. Is that really where you look at your peers at Oxford, where they may not have now carried on in the subject that they've done, but that's what they've demonstrated? Is that really the skill?
I think so, yeah. So I would say it's definitely something I didn't really appreciate going in at the time. You know, being sort of wet behind the ears, 18, I was like, great, got in, let's play some rugby, let's study. And probably even not necessarily leaving university at the time, but being, 5, then 10 years later on, you do, I think, realise how, and it's probably not as much as it used to be, but how much it opens doors for you going to Oxford in terms of careers. And as you say, it's pretty industry agnostic in the sense of you have a very intense tutorial system at Oxford and Cambridge where you effectively have tutorials that are 2-to-1, 3-to-1. So couple hours a week, you're basically trying to have to defend your work or answer questions to one of the professors. I mean, they are really sort of top of their game. And then I think that teaches you to think very succinctly, structured, under pressure. Again, time management is a piece, but then actually when it comes to interview for jobs as well, you've almost sort of had 200 job interviews. I mean, that's not the purpose of the education, but it does definitely prepare you to be sort of responding to questions in real time, structuring your thoughts, trying to communicate succinctly. And it definitely shows you have a work ethic that you can think and you can apply yourself. So it's definitely still quite sought after by employers, I think.
And is that, because that I guess is one of my final little bits on it. Do you think, again, I keep going back, because if you look at your journey to it all, and you'd had amazing odds on you heading off, getting 4 Blues, kind of going to Oxford when you were 13, 14 and stuff. Was it talent or hard work, kind of, particularly from the academic point of view? Like, I'm dyslexic, and I probably learned how to work when I got to university, probably my second year, because it was either kind of, you got to do something now. And I probably worked academically harder than most of my peers, just because I had to kind of stay afloat at a uni that was very good for sports science. So was it with you kind of when you're 14, 15, 16, was it suddenly you just worked harder and therefore got better? Or was it that it was always there and actually talent just kind of got you there?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think you're never going to get really anywhere without hard work and application. I appreciate for everyone probably has a different ceiling in particular topics. Like I was always good at science and maths, but I was awful at languages, for example. And I don't know if I'd worked really hard, but I've been able to go do a degree in French, no idea. But I think if you have areas where you think you're strong, unless you apply yourself, you never really know where that ceiling is. And I think that a lot of it would have been hard work, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely some intrinsic, I suppose, but it's hard to say, isn't it? I definitely, when I arrived, wasn't working particularly hard and wasn't necessarily getting anywhere in terms of set progression and stuff like that. So,
and I guess my last little bit, if you can think back, and I know you're kind of 31, so you're kind of having to go back in the day. But imagine you become a teacher, and you're like I am. You're standing in front of 13 to 18-year-olds, girls, boys. Some very interested in sports, some not. Some probably have high aspirations academically. Others, we're trying to instill that aspiration to them. You don't need kind of like one bit of advice and stuff, but your kind of journey that you've been on and you continue on, what advice would you be talking to them about? What would you be saying to them, that 13, 14-year-old or whoever, whatever age to it all?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd probably say try and do as much as you can of everything. And as being at school is probably one of the only times you're going to get that breadth of opportunity, everything on your doorstep. Like just apply yourself into everything, sport or whatever else you're interested in. Just, I'd say, soak it all in. And then I think when you care about stuff, just try and control the things you can control to an extent. So if you can apply yourself and work hard in something, you can control that. You can do it. Yeah, if you're aiming to leave school as a professional athlete and it doesn't happen, that's not the end, but at least you've sort of controlled the variables that you can control, I would say. And I think that lets you be, to an extent, sort of the master of your own destiny, which is quite nice.
And then you finished uni, you've got 4 Blues, you've kind of got your degree, chemistry, Oxford. Kind of, if you're looking at it from a probably CV point of view at the age of 22, 23, you're kind of ticking a huge amount of boxes to it all. But then you also try to then go into kind of the working world and then play basically semi-professional sport. And as much as I hope a lot of our pupils go on to play kind of professional sport and go on to represent their country or do whatever they do, the big challenge for me is always that I just want everyone to continue exercise and continue playing sport for as long as humanly possible. Some, it might just be recreational, just 2-3 times a week, but that's it, or might just be motivated on Sunday morning to drive their kid to sport. But for a lot of people, I hope they leave Cranley, they go off to uni or into the workplace, and they want to continue to play team sport in particular. It's hard, isn't it, to get suddenly that balancing right between your work and then kind of trying to play, I guess, semi-professional or kind of
it was really, I mean, I really enjoyed it, but so I played at a club called Chinner, which is sort of 20 minutes from Oxford, and played there in my last year, and then played after uni and a couple of years between sort of National 2 and National 1. And it was tough. It was tough juggling work, but it was incredibly rewarding as well, because it meant that I didn't have to stop competitive sport, and hugely competitive as well. Like, playing a game in National 1 is, I would say, it's a pretty decent standard. Like, you've probably, I mean, Roslyn Park, you coached them, right? That is a pretty competitive level of sport. Lots of players at different levels. Some young lads coming up on loan from the Prem teams. Some people a bit older on the way down, don't want to quit yet, but have played professional sports. So I really enjoyed getting to keep that competitive nature, and then just juggling that around work as well. And Chinner was a little bit harder because it was near Oxford, but you've got plenty of clubs in London, the likes of Roslyn Park, where you could play, and it allowed me to still have that outlet, I think, that enjoyment, because I've stopped now. The moment you stop proper competitive sport, it leaves a gap for sure. There's nothing that.
How have you tried to fill it?
Huh?
How have you tried to fill it?
Yeah, well, I played golf incredibly badly, and then I tried to stay on top of sort of health and fitness and stuff like that. So I'm still competitive with myself. I've just about got over ego lifting on my own for no reason, basically. I'm about to play.
And life in kind of sports management and that kind of sports side to it all. Do you enjoy it?
I love it. I mean, I do a lot of work around sort of like sponsorship and commercial strategies of sport. So did a lot of work in the Middle East, but lucky enough to work across events like Formula One and ATP, WTA tennis. And for me, I don't think I'd have necessarily gone in at the sort of level I went into if I hadn't had the sort of degree backing that I had. And then, I enjoy working in and around sport because it's an area I'm passionate about. It makes it easier to do.
Yeah. Well, Henry, thanks very much for giving up your time, buddy. I always say, you're one of those stories that whenever people talk to me about, if I'm being honest, kind of scholarships and bursaries and that kind of side to it, that you're one of those that I really kind of use as an example quite a lot. That kind of probably at age of 12, 13, I hope that you'd look back and kind of go, well, actually, just having that opportunity opened your eyes, being surrounded by people like James, kind of giving you the chemistry teacher suddenly inspiring. It suddenly created you now down a road, and undoubtedly you had talent, and maybe you'd have got there without the scholarship and stuff. But I always think it illustrates how important that a scholarship isn't just about being good at rugby or good at hockey or being good at netball or something like that. Actually, it does create an opportunity to come in. And yeah, we see it a lot. 13-year-old, all they want to do is play sport. And actually, it's the skills you utilize from that to go on and then do other great things. And
you learn so many skills like teamwork, leadership, even if you don't realize it at the time from sport. And I'm definitely self-aware enough. I'm hugely grateful to the school for what it's given me. As you say, I mean, I had a very different life trajectory when I was 13 before coming to Cranley, and they say, it made such a lasting impression on me and such a big course change in terms of my life as well. So yeah, definitely look back on that with like a lot of gratitude and fondness as well.
Yeah, no, and it's lovely that you're still mates with lots of the year and stuff like that. And it ages me when you're suddenly 31 and engaged, Henry. It does age me.
Yeah.
I
mean, I still look fondly on the shed, or not even the shed, the cupboard. And
yeah, do you know what? The actual writing on the wall is still there. It's
Really?
and I haven't seen it for a while, but it does still make me smile. Kind of where it all started. And now we've got we've got a new gym, we've got new facilities. But it's a nice kind of.
And I still remember a lot of not all of them, but a lot of the games we played at school, like for sure. Like fondly.
Sadly, I'll always remember the ones we lost.
Really?
Yeah, it's just the way that my mind is. But no, it was a really talented group. But Henry, cheers for your time, buddy.
Thanks, Lucy. Great to chat. Take care, mate. Bye.